All right, all set.
Thanks, Erin. Alex, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'm happy to say hi to everyone and thanks for coming to spend your lunch with us today. We're here to talk about ensuring authentic online assessment. So if that's what you're interested in, you're in the right spot. Rob and I and Erin are here from SUNY Online to talk with you about this, this interesting and important topic. And we want you to feel free to pop any of your questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll have plenty of time for question and answer as well. So I'm going to share my screen.
Oh, let me stop sharing.
Okay, great. And I just want to kick us off to talk a little bit to kind of set Rob up for his part of the presentation. And when we're talking about designing authentic online assessments, this is a key aspect of online course design and online faculty development. So if you're an instructional designer or if you're a faculty person, I think at some point or another, when you're asked to do this, you start having to think of how you are going to assess learning in your instruction. And I think one of the key pieces, or what I like to call the magic formula for thinking about online course design, is starting with well-articulated learning objectives, and then how are you going to assess whether or not your students have met those outcomes, and what you're going to need in order to assess, what content and activities are you going to need the students to engage in order to be able to effectively, efficiently, and authentically assess the students. And so I think, there are a number of ways, and whether you're experienced teaching online or just starting out, there are a number of ways that students engage and interact in an online learning environment to essentially make their thinking and their learning visible to you, so that you can design ways to provide feedback and assessment. I think the getting your objectives articulated well is the first step. So I'm going to show you a couple of links here at the beginning, and I will paste them in the chat as soon as I'm done, so you will have access to them. And then I'm going to turn it over to Rob. So like I said, the first step is understanding how to write a really good objective. And so here's a document that I wanted to share with you that shows some less than ideal examples of articulated objectives, and here a better way to articulate a similar, with an objective with a similar goal. So these are just some examples and some information to share with you about that to get you started. I really want to, if you have not yet dived into and explored Bloom's taxonomy, I want to share with you a couple of resources that will help you understand how to really articulate your objectives in a clear, concise, measurable way. And so this is the Bloom's wheel, and you'll see that that it's really just Bloom's taxonomy with the categories here, the verbs, and then how they and then some examples of activities that map to those particular verbs. Here's another resource that you can take a look at that talks about what that differentiates the different knowledge dimensions and the different cognitive processes. I think it's not entirely if this is overwhelming to you a little bit to think about this, I just want to give you resources that you can come and refer to so that you can think about, am I having students understand something, or do I want them to dig a little deeper and analyze or evaluate something? And then when you look at the knowledge dimensions in that evaluate category, you can have them check for consistency among sources, or at the conceptual level, determine relevance, procedural, judge the efficiency. So this is just a matrix to help you really hone in on what is it that you're trying to have the students do, and examples of what you're actually reaching for with the ways that you're having them do it. So that's why Bloom's is really such a valuable tool, especially in helping you well articulate your learning objectives. And here's another cute graphic that shows you the different verbs that you can use that address each of those domains that we were just talking about. And then I wanted to share with you this tool from ASU that'll actually help you write your objectives. As step one, you need to choose your cognitive domain. Once you choose the domain, I chose evaluate, then this gives you some selections of verbs. So I'm going to have you, the students, assess something. And then, so by the end of this course or lesson, you will be able to assess, and then you need to describe what the learners are going to be able to do. So you would type that in here, and then you would continue with the process, and it would give you your final objective. So this is just a tool that'll help you to hone in on the domain that you're trying to address and use the right verb and the language that will help you understand what it is that you are trying to assess with your objectives. One of the things that often comes up with faculty and with instructional designers is, as you are articulating your objectives, the issue of workload comes up. And sometimes one of the challenges, I think, is that instructors want to give everything that they know to the students. And what ends up happening is that the course becomes a course and a half. And so, like I said, the magic formula is, what are your objectives? How are you going to assess those objectives? And what are the contents and interaction that needs to happen to allow you to give feedback and assess the students? That's the magic formula. If there's anything in there that does not fit in any one of those buckets, it doesn't need to be in the course. It shouldn't be in the course. The workload estimator here can help you sort of gauge and understand time on task and so forth. And so you simply plug in some of the things that you might know, like class duration, how much reading, how much writing, how much discussion. And then if you have labs or other kinds of activities, you can play around with some of the sliders. And as you see, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner, as you adjust the number of, I'm just playing with this one to show you how it works, but the total number of hours per week and independent work and contact hours changes as you play with the slider. That's kind of the setup stuff that I wanted to share with you, and now turn it over to Rob to talk about rubrics that will be the framework and underpinning of making sure that you are able to take advantage, leverage the options, and minimize any limitations in the online teaching environment to make sure that your teaching and your assessments are authentic for the online environment. So Rob, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Alex. If you could, you stop sharing. I'll share my screen. Just so everyone knows, I'm Rob Piorkowski. I've been an instructional designer for 20 years and an online instructor for 16 years. And yes, I'm here to talk to you about some functionality that's already built into your learning management system. And it is a fantastic way to assess students, not only for you, the instructor, but for them as well. And so I'm just going to go through that a little bit, and show you, some of the tips that we've learned along the way. So I have up here on the slide just a basic definition of what a rubric is. I like to define it as preset narrative feedback for students. Okay, so there's a little bit of upfront work when we create a rubric, but that upfront work, those hours spent, laboring over, as Alex was pointing out, words are real important in terms of, creating these rubrics and clarifying your expectations for students. So, again, when we have preset narrative feedback, we are sort of ready to go with providing students with very pointed feedback on that is that is centered around assignments and tasks that you have for them. And so I'll get more into that in a second. But here, expectations, for those of you who have taught online for a while, I'm sure you understand that clarity of expectations for students is paramount in instructional design, because they have access to the computer, they have access to their screens. And so if the more clarity we can provide for them, the fewer questions they'll have, and the more efficient they'll be in meeting your expectations. So let's just get to it. Sorry. So I have a bulleted list here, and I try not to read off of my slides for you. But here are some important rationales from the instructor perspective as to why why use rubrics. And that second bullet can't be overemphasized. I've been using when I was teaching online, I used rubrics quite extensively, and noticed as soon as I started using them that they saved me a lot of time in terms of grading my students. For those of you who teach online, I'm sure you've experienced, once a course launches, a lot of your, sort of teaching time is spent interacting with your students and here providing feedback to your students. And so rubrics go a very long way in avoiding typing out the same comments to each and every student. For those of us who have graded the same assignment with 20 students, sometimes we see we find ourselves typing out the same exact thing. Again, with preset narrative feedback, we can expedite the grading process significantly. Also, as you grade with rubrics, you learn a lot about which criteria, since rubrics are very much focused on the criteria of an assignment and not necessarily the approach from students. What we find out is we find out a lot about our expectations. And so what I mean by that is, let's say I have 5 different criteria on which I'm grading an assignment. When I'm finished grading the whole class, I do find some windows of opportunity to amend that assignment, to look at it and say, okay, well, on one single piece of criteria, most students might need a little more clarity in my instructions, might need a little more help. And so it helps me as the instructor really zero in on what students are doing well at and what students aren't doing so well at. And so it helps me a lot as the instructor understand how to improve my assignments. And then, for the learners, it's super helpful, especially when we show students the rubric in advance of them completing the assignment. Students then have a checklist that they can, refer to and make sure that they have met all of the instructor's expectations when those expectations are spelled out for them in the grading instrument. Um, it also gives students an awareness that there is objectivity in the grading process, that when it's crystal clear that they are going to be graded on specific criteria, they no longer sort of can fabricate the excuse, if you will, that the instructor doesn't like me, or I didn't grade this, I didn't get a good grade on this for some kind of personal reason. Again, when the criteria is spelled out for them, they really are forced to focus on the content itself and not any kind of personal any kind of personal perspective on how they were graded. So when we use rubrics too, as I mention all this, and as I say, preset narrative feedback, I do want to make sure everyone understands that there's plenty of room in the learning management system. When we use rubrics, there's plenty of room to customize your feedback to students. It's not as if you're forced to simply conform to just the rubric for providing your feedback. So we'll see that in a second, but I just want to make sure everyone sort of knows that going forward. Okay, so if you haven't used a rubric, how do you get started? Well, first of all, in addition to those resources, that Alex mentioned, and especially looking at your objectives, your learning objectives for students, learning outcomes for students. Take a look at that, because this process of creating rubrics does is a little bit different in that it requires you to really look at yourself in the mirror, or look at these assignments very carefully and say, what am I expecting of students? You kind of want to dig deep and say, what is important in these assignments, in this particular task, and what do I want to see them do? And it's an extremely healthy exercise. I've done it a lot with faculty in terms of looking in and sort of just brainstorming criteria, as we saw before in a few of the resources that Alex, the Blooms especially, the focus on verbs. Okay, when we talk about language, the focus on verbs is very important, because verbs verbs explain what you want students to do. Okay, but anyway, very first step would be looking at, all right, what are my expectations of students? And then, as the bullets say, start off with one rubric for an assignment, and see how it goes during the semester. And if you dig a little further and you do a little search, you'll see that there are millions of rubrics out there. I shouldn't say millions, maybe hundreds of thousands of rubrics out there. And if you do a Google search on just your rubric, on your assignment, I guarantee you will find something that will be compelling to you. There are a few links here in the presentation. AACU has lots of rubrics for all different topics. I'll show you a resource when I'm done with the slideshow. And I mean, some of these are just single resources. There's really so many rubrics out there, what you want to zero in on is probably your own discipline. And again, what you want to do is you want to make sure that any rubric that you create is consistent with in language and intent with the instructions for the assignment itself, and is very much like a course objective when that the achievement levels are measurable. So you want to use sort of language because you're going to be providing feedback, and of course rubrics will translate into a grade for students. So you want to make sure that some of the language or all of the language revolves around measurable outcomes for students. So let's here talking a little bit about some of the descriptors. So avoid words like interesting and creative and something that needs to be interpreted, and try to have more poignant language for students. Excuse me. You also, when we create a rubric, we usually create criteria, but also different achievement levels in terms of meeting that criteria. So and the tool itself in Blackboard will force you to create a numerical scale for each level. And this is important too, because again, it's all part of that process of sort of looking inward and saying, okay, well, if someone achieves this particular outcome, what is that worth? Is that worth 70%? Is that worth 80% of this piece of criteria? You just want to be aware of that we can get very, very exact in terms of the points assigned to each of these achievement levels. And again, related to what I said before, we can also adjust it when we need to. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands we're not forced to conform to all the numbers in the rubric. We have a lot of flexibility when we're grading assignments and when we are using these rubrics for grading. So let's see what it looks like, And so I created a couple of screenshots here, just to show you where they are in Blackboard and how we create them in Blackboard. So they're under the course tools, and when we click the rubrics, this the little graphic there is what pops up. Here I've already created some rubrics in this particular course where I took the screenshot. So I have several. So in Blackboard, just so you know, it saves all the rubrics that you've created, and they are portable documents. So you're able to export rubrics and import them into other courses if you teach more than one Blackboard course. When I do go to create a new rubric, here's what pops up. And so this sort of illustrates both criteria and achievement levels at the same time. On the left-hand side is the criteria, and so the criteria are the rows. You'll notice that there's a button here that says Add Row, and then we have Add Columns. Columns are the levels of achievement. So here we have novice, competent, and proficient. It's just what pops up. You'll also notice too that the percentages really need to be massaged. For those of us who who use these rubrics, we realize that this is a little draconian for a novice level achievement on formatting. So we would adjust these to make them a little more appropriate to our assignments. Now, again, in the spirit of what I said before, this is upfront work, but I promise you'll be paid back when in time when the grading process begins. And then what we do is we fill out all these cells with what we think the achievement, novice level achievement is, competent level achievement. All of these, you'll notice too, have chevrons next to them, these little down arrows. We can modify what all of these terms, and we can edit this entire document. So so we're not stuck with this. And so, like here, I kept the novice, competent, and proficient, but here's a rubric somewhat filled out, where again, I should have probably adjusted some of these percentages because they're a little harsh, but we get the point in terms of establishing criteria here, and then levels of achievement here. And what I like to do is say something like, proficient, I usually label exemplary. Competent, I suppose I would put proficient, and here I would say something like needs improvement. On the criteria, just as a tip, what I would recommend is use language that is in your instructions for the assignment. So most of us set up the criteria for students when we introduce the assignment. Here's what I expect from you. Here's what I want from you. What I would recommend is literally launching this rubric on another screen or another tab, and pull the exact language off of the instructions for the assignment and drop it into the criteria once you have it. Okay, are there any questions at this point? Okay, I'll keep going. Here's what it looks like in the grading process. And this is where, it really, stands out for me as an instructor. I get what I essentially, since I've done all the upfront work, I have all of the sort of different criteria and what my different achievement levels are preset. So Blackboard does a great job when I use a rubric of displaying not only the student work right in front of me, but also the rubric right alongside of this. So essentially what I do is I read the work, and then I apply the rubric, and all I do is click inside the radio buttons, and once I click, I read, and then I click. If I want to add any more feedback, I would add that feedback right down here. And then I would be done grading the student, and Blackboard also does a great job of just launching the next student's work. So it's quite intuitive in terms of knowing what I want. So here we have show descriptions and show feedback. Of course, this is a screenshot. So if I have time, I will show you how that works. I'll launch a course and actually show you, some of that functionality. But essentially, my grading process is I tell Blackboard I'm going to start grading. When I start launching these assignments, my rubric pops up right next to it. And as I click these, it populates the points, the grade itself. So when I'm done clicking out all the criteria, then what it does is it automatically drops a grade into the grade cell. So what I've created here, and this is available to you as well, and I'll provide the link in a second to all of this content. I know Erin's going to provide links for you too. But I have all of the content for this slideshow, as well as some other things for you. But here is something that I've been doing with faculty, and faculty can do for themselves. It's a very simple sheet, as you can see. It's nothing crazy. It is really it just provides a view of your learning objectives, your assessment instructions, and then a field for rubric criteria all on one sheet. And so what it helps me do when I sit down with faculty sometimes and we sit down to create some of these rubrics is, we'll copy paste into these 3 different columns. And usually the rubric criteria, because we're creating a rubric, is not yet complete. So what we start doing is we read, okay, the learning objectives, we read the assessment outcomes, and we start brainstorming some criteria for a particular assignment that is generated from the actual, text of what students are seeing. So, and again, even as just a straight ahead intellectual exercise, we just want to make sure that, are we grading all of this? Is this exactly what we're grading on? Because if not, what we might want to do is, tweak, these first 2 columns as well. What we want to make sure is that there is alignment and direct alignment between our stated outcomes, our instructions for particular assessments, and the rubric criteria that we use to grade students. So, I call this the alignment worksheet, but it works really well, again, if you're an instructional designer in the room, to work with faculty and, just to sit down and, again, go deep. Really just assignment by assignment, look at what you're expecting from students, and then be able to create criteria that is directly connected in language and intent to what we've already told students that we want them to do, and the expectations that we've already laid out. So feel free to use this worksheet. So here, again, what I've just said, can we tweak things to make things as clear as possible for students? And so this encourages us to revise language, in all 3 columns. Okay, so we have about 12 more minutes. I have some of this information. I'm just going to exit out of here and be able to put these in the chat for you. So
Rob, while you're doing that, a question did come up in the chat.
Yep.
And so just wondering if you can clarify how you might set a range of points for the achievement levels.
Yeah, let me get into that right now. This is a demo course that we create in Blackboard here, and so let me go down and let's just look at some of the rubrics here, and what this functionality actually looks for. So here's one that let's see if we can open this. Yeah, this is pretty good. So so here's one that's already created. This is a grading rubric for discussion topics. And so here's some of the rubric detail. So, here's an example of, adjusting adjusting the point values for some of these, for some of this criteria and some of these achievement levels in, pretty much in a more, rational way. So, like, for instance, we see that there's 5 criteria. This assignment is out of 10 points. And so the whole assignment is worth 10 points. So as I look at it, okay, so really the process of creating a rubric is really creating, this one's called exceptional, but whatever meets the expectations best should be, the first column that you work on. So what is a perfect assignment, and then you work backwards from there. So so here, let's just, I know that this might be real small, so I'll read it. Exceptional is in terms of responsiveness to discussion. Exceptional is it addresses all discussion questions and directions in depth, So here, and even that might be a little vague. We might want to, clarify that. If I were working on this rubric, I'd say, what do you mean by depth? But here, a good one is really only half a point below. And so this gradient seems a little more rational to me as rubrics go, as opposed to the 0, 50, and 100% that we saw before in the first example on the slideshow. And so then we see, again, we go for the exemplary performance, and then we go down just a little bit. The good is addresses all discussion questions and directions, not in depth. Okay, and then average is addresses only some of the discussion questions, and then failing, again, my style would be needs improvement, would be does not address discussion questions. Well, yeah, okay, so we're down to 0.5 points. So Erin, could you just ask the question one more time? I just want to see.
Yeah,
I
you
want to make
bet.
sure I
Yeah.
answered it.
Just setting the range for the achievement levels and using range as opposed to a specific point value.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Mhm.
Yeah, the range for achievement levels. So let me just show you when we create a new one. I just want to make sure we understand. When we create a new rubric, again, this is what you saw before in terms of the example. Here, if anyone who scores in the competent level, again, we can adjust this to like 80%. That kind of makes a little more sense. We can create another column, and we can keep creating columns and move things around. So we can create a 60% column, and but we're not able to make the competent from 60 to 80 points, if that's part of the question. But what we
Right.
are able to do here is adjust the weight of this particular criteria in regard to the entire assignment. So if formatting is indeed worth 1/3 of the assignment, and we want to adjust that and say, no, you know what, it's really only worth 15% or something like that. We can adjust that. What we do have to make sure of is that at the end of the day, and these are only in percentages, and again, each of these criteria will need to add up, all of the criteria need to add up to 100%, so that there is so the weight is distributed toward the overall grade properly. And so we can add rows too as well. So with that sort of flexibility, we can adjust what we have, what the amount of weight we put on a single piece of criteria. And of course, since the achievement levels are only within a particular criteria, those are adjusted as well.
Mhm. And another question, I'm not sure if you have the student view available, but Linda is asking how and where do the students view the rubric for an assignment?
Oh, great question. Great
Yeah.
question. So when we do have an assignment, so let me just show you. Here are some assignments. Sorry, that's from the grade book here. When we look at assignments for students, let me show you where that is. I just need to get to the home screen. Why am I having problems doing that? So here we go, lessons. when we look at, some of the assignments here, so here's an assignment. And sorry, I'm just going to pop into the student view. So sorry. There we go. So here's the student view. When we look at the assignment, right up front, students, if we choose it as the instructor to view the rubric, they will see the rubric and how this is displayed, how it will be graded. So
And Rob, just to clarify, the instructor has to enable that the student sees that beforehand, correct?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
So it is a field to toggle when you're setting up the assignment, that you show the rubric to students before they submit. Otherwise, it would just be shown after.
Right. I'll show you that real quick, and then I want to turn it over to Alex real quick.
Great.
So right here, I'm in the edit mode for the assignment. I'm back in as the instructor, and here is the choice you need to select to show the rubrics to students. So that this is on an assignment in Blackboard. Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I'm going to turn it over to Alex. Alex has, I think, a few more things to say and a few more resources to share.
Hey, thanks, Rob. If you have any more questions for Rob, feel free to pop them in the chat as we are finishing up this session. I did want to share with you a couple of more links that are available to you as resources as you explore rubrics and alternatives for assessments. So I'm going to point you to this page that has a lot of general tips, tools, and strategies. The first one is in general the 9 principles of good practice for assessing student learning. And really the point of this particular resource is highlighting the importance that an assessment is not an end in itself, but really a vehicle for continuous learning improvement, both from the instructor's perspective in understanding how students are learning, and from the student's perspective in terms of how they can continuously improve their own learning in your online teaching environment. And so I'll leave you the link for this to explore and read through on your own time. I also wanted to share this resource from Rutgers that I thought was particularly good, especially the 10 alternatives to exams, special advice for open book assessments and quantitative courses, and then resources for writing multiple choice exams. If you're going to do that, you want to make sure that you do that well, especially given the online nature of online instructional environments that are basically open book, potentially collaborative, and so forth. So you want to have as much information as possible as you design your assessments, and really understand the breadth of types of alternatives to traditional testing that you can employ in a variety of ways. Here's another resource that gives you short, I call it the online online assessment techniques, or OATS. This is based off of work that was called CATS, classroom assessment techniques. So it's basically that adapted for online. And so things like a minute paper and 1-sentence summary and student generated questions, those are ideas for you to think about as you're thinking about alternatives. And here's a similar resource talking about alternatives to traditional assessments. So another list. There may be some duplication from list to list, but I wanted to give you kind of a variety of resources from a variety of places to have a look at as you're considering this. And then finally, we have a lot of information and resources on creating rubrics, as well as examples of types of rubrics. So when you're creating a rubric for your assignment, we want to make sure that you have resources and examples to look at so that you can, get ideas for how to frame and phrase, the rubrics that you may implement in your instruction. And then last but not least, I wanted to point to the assessment and feedback standards in our Oscar rubric, so that you make sure that you are aligning your assessment with effective practices in general in online teaching and learning. So that's really all I had, all additional things I had to share with you. I'm going to give you the links, as I mentioned. I just popped them all in the chat. So everything I just showed you, those links are now in the chat. And I want to thank you for coming, and thank Rob for presenting, and Aaron for co-piloting here with us. And we hope to have you come back at some point for our next session, which Aaron has that already up on the screen, which is kind of the other side of this coin. And I hope you'll join us for strategies to support online academic integrity, which is going to be a great presentation in February. We'll then be talking about Oscar 4.0 in March, and supporting online student success in April, and then implementing a larger scale online course quality review and refresh process with Oscar in May. So we hope to see you come back and join us again at a future event. These are all recorded and will be available to you. Aaron has popped the registration link in the chat, and for some reason, Aaron, that link doesn't
Yeah, I
look.
see that.
But anyway, we hope to see you back again soon, or if you can only check out the recordings, those are available to you as well. Is there anything else that anyone is has a quick question on, or Aaron or Rob, that you want to make sure to say?
Good.
So I could put it in a quick plug for the summit. Every year we have an annual conference, and for those who are interested in online teaching and learning, and this year it is completely virtual, and it is completely free. And you have to register, and you don't have to be from SUNY. So if we have friends in the group here who are not from SUNY, you're welcome to attend this event for free. And it's virtual, like I said, so we hope to see you. The program is fantastic, and if you have any time and chance to attend, I really hope to see you there. The summit is recorded also, so if there's presentations at times and days when you're not available, you will be able to review those presentations on your own time. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.